Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co-host Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. Yo, Legacy Leaders. What is good? Welcome to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, presented to you by the Legacy Leadership Learning Group. I got it right this time.
Hey.
Yes, sir. This is a show where we teach you what it takes to live as a leader worth following, how to develop others and your team to do the same, and in doing so, leave a legacy for generations to come. I am Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., along with my co-host, my homeboy, Devon Watts Jr.
What's going on, leaders?
Yeah. If you are new, or if you're a loyal listener, we appreciate you, sincerely. For real, we do. And in that appreciation, we just ask that you like this particular episode, leave a review if you are so inclined, and then share this podcast episode with anybody who you know will get value out of this, especially as we continue this series on decision making. If you are one of our viewers on our YouTube channel, again, we appreciate you so much. We've picked up some additional subscribers over the last couple of weeks as well. So if you have not subscribed, please do that. And then leave us a comment and share the video again with another entrepreneur or individual leader that you know, again, would get tremendous amount of value from this topic as we continue to run down decision making and really focusing on strategies to help make smarter and faster decisions. It is ultimately what we're discussing today. And again, continuing on from last week, as we talked about really 5 tenets of really the mindset that you need to have when it comes to decision making. So we wanted to get into the mindset first, break those things down, and then start getting into some of the strategy pieces, which we are going to do. But before that, we really wanted to make sure that we talked about 5 reasons that cause indecision, procrastination, and even delayed decision making before we get into those 7 strategies. So that's what today's episode is going to be all about.
Yeah, I think what's important for us, right, we spent a lot of time in the last episode really kind of breaking down the 5 tenets that are essential for making effective decisions, like when you, from a mindset perspective, like being in the right mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And we just be remiss if we didn't address the fact that it's also your mindset that hinders you from being able to make effective decisions. And that manifests itself in the form of procrastination, indecision. And so we want to address those things. And so we're not necessarily, as you know, kind of we go through this, we're not necessarily going to provide solutions for that, because that'll be in the next episode when we get into the specific tactics for effective decision making. But this is more about understanding what drives procrastination, indecision, and having that awareness will then equip you to being able to leverage the right tool or tactic to be able to overcome. So definitely looking forward to getting into this topic. We actually talked a little bit too about this slightly in our last cold brew and combo episode, that if you weren't able to join us on the live version of Podbean, which we go live every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. in Podbean, cold brew and convos, where we're usually chopping it up about entrepreneurial topics, maybe current events. Who knows, we may have some surprise guests on to chop it up with us. But in this last, excuse me, in this last Cold Brew and Convos episode titled State of the Culture, we talk about some cultural events, specifically with the Joe Budden podcast and some recent developments there, and then also what's happening in the culture from a labor market perspective and kind of the great resignation that is due to come, that people are predicting is coming, as folks have started to make the decision around leaving their corporate employer to jump into that pool of entrepreneurship, because the pandemic has taught them that the safest bet they can make is building something themselves, right? And those are obviously in both of these examples. I'm not going to break it down here, but you guys got to go back and listen to it. But we talk about the decisions that you make as an entrepreneur, right? In those circumstances, whether it's, removing folks from your inner circle, or making decisions to take the business in a different direction, or the decision to jump into business, right? And so it's just timely then that we would talk about decision making and the mindset, because again, those are some pretty weighty ones, and ones that, believe it or not, would definitely lend itself to either procrastination or indecision. I mean, in fact, if you look at those specific use cases, we talked about that just a little bit in both examples with the Joe Budden podcast, and then with folks that are jumping into the entrepreneurial space, how indecision and procrastination is rearing its ugly head. And honestly, I'm thinking about the Joe Budden situation specifically, it kind of actually made the situation worse, because there were some decisions that needed to be made early on when these issues started to rear their ugly head that weren't made. And the one thing that's true about a difficult decision is that it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't disappear, right? And the longer that you allow it to sit, the more urgent, right? The more urgent and the greater the weight of the decision when you finally have to make it, right? And either you're going to make the decision, or the decision is going to make you, right? And so, I'm really excited to kind of get into these topics around what drives procrastination, so that we can equip our entrepreneurs, our entre leaders, with the awareness to be able to avoid it, and then in our next episode, the tools to be able to overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have really five reasons that we want to break down for you. We're going to talk about a lack of confidence, conflict with personal values, a lack of information, and how that can hinder your decision making or lead to procrastination. What happens when there's too much information, and then the outcome of decisions that are just totally unknown. So D, why don't you go ahead and jump into that first one and break it down for our folks, in particular, lack of confidence.
Absolutely. So when we talk about lack of confidence and how lack of confidence can really drive indecision from a decision-making perspective, what we're really getting at here is we're talking about that voice that exists in our heads, right? That voice that exists in all of our heads, whatever you want to call it, your intuition, your gut, your conscious, right? But that voice, that when that voice starts to dabble in negative self-talk, how that can actually be the biggest enemy, the biggest enemy to making an effective decision, right? It's that voice in your head that tells you, are you sure that this is the right thing to do? What if you make this decision and everything goes horribly wrong, right? What if you make this decision and everything that you've been working towards, you've been building, is destroyed, right? Or that negative self-talk that says, hey, your track record, you don't have a good track record of making decisions. You've made some pretty bad decisions before. Like, maybe this is another situation where you're going to make another bad decision, right? And I think, the key there, right? The key there is being real with yourself, in the sense that who hasn't, as an entrepreneur, made a bad decision? Like, as a leader, period, right? Our history, our track record is peppered with bad decisions. Now, they are bad decisions, or we find out that they're bad decisions, obviously in hindsight, right? Because we never go into a situation intentionally trying to make the wrong decision, right? We're making what we feel is the best decision with the information that we have at our disposal. And then after we make the decision, we're exposed to different additional information. We get feedback, and we find out if it was the right decision or not, right? But it's amazing how many leaders that I've had to had the opportunity to work with over my career, where so much of their indecision was driven by this lack of confidence, this fear of being wrong, and the insecurity that festers, right? Almost the sentiment of, man, if I make the wrong decision, I'll be exposed for not being capable in the first place, right? And I would say that for a lot of entrepreneurs, and you can keep me honest on this, Jimmy, but a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of us as entrepreneurs, a lot of us as leaders, like, it's natural for us at time to fall victim to this feeling of imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, just this notion of, like, man, I'm not as good as people may think I am, right? I'm not as good as people may think I am.
Am I going to be exposed, for some lack of skill or lack of knowledge, and am I really good enough to pull this off?
Absolutely. Or, am I overestimating my abilities, or am I as knowledgeable about this area as people think I am or I claim to be, right? And so what I'm sharing, the reason why I bring that up for our leaders is to one level set that you're not alone. You're not alone in having these thoughts, but what it comes down to is, how do you respond when these thoughts appear, like when they manifest themselves, right? And you've heard me mention this before, and I share with our entrepreneurs, our entre leaders, our listeners out there, right? Is I've always viewed self-doubt as gasoline, right? As gas, right? And gasoline is a very powerful resource, right? Source of energy, all right? Because
that's why everybody flocking to those gas stations.
yeah, you're in line. It's a gas shortage right now. Bro, I see people, filling up containers, filling up bags, and like, not to divulge too much, right? Diverge too much, right? But it's just hilarious because, like, I'm sitting here, and I'm the type of person, like, I don't watch a lot of different shows and stuff like that. But like, if I have the TV on, it's because I'm consuming the news. Like, I was gonna say I'm at that age, but I'd be lying. I've been like this since I was like 18, 19. Like, I like politics. I like what's going on in the world. Like, I just like to be informed by those things. It just always intrigued me. And I feel like you got to know what's going on, right? Gabriella, on the other hand, is not like that. Like, if she got the TV on, it's going to be on Desperate Housewives or Real Housewives or something like that, right? She gets a lot of her news from social media, and we all know how accurate or inaccurate that can be at times, right? And so we're sitting up here like 2 nights ago or whatever, and she's in the room and I'm in the living room, like just chilling, like I think I was reading. She's like, "Babe," calling across the house. I don't respond because I'm reading. "Babe." Yeah. And she's like, "We gotta go get gas. It's a gas shortage." No, it's not. Like, no, it's not. Yeah, it is. Everybody's saying it's a gas shortage. It's not a gas shortage. And she's like, "But then why would they say it is?" Who is they? The internet. That's why they would say it. Because there's not a gas shortage. People are inadvertently creating a gas shortage by panic buying.
Exactly.
There's not a gas shortage at all. We are fine. And so she's like, "So we don't have to get gas?" No, we don't have to go get gas. We don't have to go get gas. Not at all. "Are you sure?" "I'm 100% positive." And sure enough, right? So anyway, back to gasoline though. So that fear is very much like that fear, that lack of confidence is very much like gasoline, right? And you got a decision to make when you're presented with it, because you have it. You have the gasoline, right? You can pour it all over yourself, light the match, and let it consume you and burn in the flames, right? Or you can put it in your tank, right, and use it to propel you forward, right? Because it's the same fuel source. It's just about how you use it, right? Again, gasoline can use it to burn down and destroy. It can also be the reason why you progress forward and you're able to travel around and reach new destinations, reach new heights, right? And so for our entrepreneurs, as you're listening, and just coming to the realization that, yeah, a large part of my indecisiveness as a decision maker, as a leader, comes down to this lack of confidence or this fear of imposter syndrome or being exposed, right? The challenge for you is, what do you do with that lack of confidence? How do you use that fuel? Do you allow it to consume you, or do you put it in your tank? You allow it to propel you forward. And what I mean by that is use it as motivation to address the root cause of that lack of confidence, so that you can be confident and then make the effective decision, right? And again, we won't get into the specific tactics around those things. We'll be breaking that stuff down in the next episode. But I think that's definitely well worth just being able to pause and reflect on.
Yeah, when you talk about the imposter syndrome too, I also think about other things that cause that, right? And insecurity, but especially in this day and age, and you mentioned social media, there's so many entrepreneurs out there, right? There's so many people doing their thing with their Instagram pages. So many people now that Clubhouse is on Android. I've been on there and just listening and learning and kind of peeping.
I'm a dot connector. I'm an influencer.
There you go. Now, and some people, they very well may be, right? And we've talked about people that are very well-known entrepreneurs and millions and billionaires, and you look at those folks, it's comparing your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 20.
Can't do it.
And then that starts to mess with how you see yourself, and then it influences the decisions that you make, one way or another. And I mentioned this to you a couple of days ago. One of the books that I was reading, the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding, right? It's don't look at these businesses or entrepreneurs and what they're doing right now. Look at what they did before they got successful, because that's where you're at. Like, you haven't made it there yet. So stop looking at all the things that they're doing now and knowing, oh, I can't be like Gary Vee. Yeah, Gary Vee has like 15 people doing all of his marketing and social media, right? What was he doing prior to that? You know what I mean? And whatever that example is, but don't compare your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 20. And if you're going to look for role models, that's great. But look at what they were doing before they made it big and they were super successful. Those are the steps. That's the grind that you need to study, that you need to be on right now, so that you can then reach where they're at, or even surpass, whatever level that success is, and whatever you deem success to be for yourself. But just so important to help yourself, fight those things mentally, so that you do not have that lack of confidence to make decisions.
Right. And actually, I love that you're bringing that up specifically too, right? Because, just because you are indecisive when it comes to making a decision doesn't mean that all decisions you'll be making are going to introduce indecision. And what I mean by that, right, is like, all right, I may be indecisive about the direction that I'm going to take my business, right? So I'm not ready to make that decision right now, but I can make the decision to get more information, or to research, or to look at somebody that I do idolize or model myself after, and go back to their journey and say, okay, well, when they had to make a similar decision, like, what was the steps that they went through? What are the things that they learned, right? Like, that in itself, the decision to get more information is a decision. And I think that's another thing too, is like, not to get too deep into it, but, obviously we got here just a little bit, right? Which is making decisions, gaining wins, growing, whatever it is. All of those things are a momentum-based sport. And so I think sometimes we get so fixated on the inability to make the decision that we want to make, and not acknowledge all the other decisions that are being made leading up to that, right? And sometimes you have to be able to celebrate or acknowledge the momentum that exists in the other decisions that are being made. Again, maybe I haven't made a decision around my marketing strategy yet, right? But I shouldn't let that define me as an indecisive entrepreneur, and that means that everything else goes to hell. It just means that it's not time to make that decision yet, because there's a bunch of other decisions that need to be made before that. The decision of what other entrepreneurs am I going to look out, or research and look out to, and go back to where they were in their walk on their chapter 1. whether we're making these steps. What are the different platforms or different tools and vehicles available to me from a marketing perspective, right? Like all of those are decisions. The decision to inform, educate yourself and inform is a decision. And if you're making that and pursuing it and you acknowledge it, then you can also acknowledge the momentum that's being built in your ability to make a decision, right? And so I think part of what feeds a lack of that self-confidence sometimes is a lack of self-awareness, and the fact that, again, we're not maybe in a position right now to make the final decision that we need to make, but that doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge all the other decisions that you're making along the way to get to a place where you're prepared to make that final decision, and acknowledge that momentum that's being built. And so yeah, man, and don't even get me started on the just kind of the social media aspects, right? Because you're absolutely right. You can't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. And I would even go so far to say for some of these folks, especially, and this is why decision making is such a critical topic for us to discuss with our entrepreneurs, our entre leaders out there, is for some of these people, you can't even compare your chapter 1 to their chapter 1, because their chapter 1 is fiction. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's a total make believe, right? Yeah. And so it has all the aesthetic and the veneer and all the shine, and I'm doing this, and I'm entrepreneur of the year, building a business, building a successful business, successful brand, And then when you know the real, you're like, nah, man, you ain't got it like that. You know what I mean? So you have to really be discerning in the decisions that you make around, what entrepreneurs out there, what other folks out there that you look to learn from, and then also being able to have the discipline and discernment to be able to just kind of focus on your game, your game and your business, and not necessarily get distracted by what's going on with other people, and using that to measure or assess your own success. Like, that's a very, very slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a good segue, because you talk about discernment, and I think it gets down to, like, what do you value, and do you really value the same thing that these other individuals that you may be looking at value? So the second thing that we want to focus on is what happens when you're trying to make decisions and there's a conflict with your personal values. Again, if you've taken the steps, and I encourage you, if you haven't, to really think about what is your personal value system, right? And going through that activity of, making a specific note, and whatever that number is, it could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things that you truly value that help to guide your decisions. So if you've done that, you really think about it, like it shouldn't even be really worth your time to start kind of wrestling with yourself and your mind about how do I make these type of decisions. But if you have to make a choice that directly conflicts with your morals, your faith, or just your own personal ethics, like, just be done with it. Be done with it, move on, and don't even, again, expend the calories necessary to allow yourself to even wrestle with that. Because just the consequences of having to live with yourself after that, like, you just don't want to have to deal with that. Going against your intuition, going against your faith, your values, and the things that you hold dear to you, and make a decision that is in contrast to that is in conflict with that. So many times, I remember when I was given an opportunity, right? I had applied for, I was a training team manager several years back, way back in the day, and had applied for the center training manager position. And the position was coming available because my boss at the time had decided to retire. And I knew he was doing it out of, from his heart. But there was a part of the interview that I was going to go through that was, kind of like a mock situation that I had to read through and provide answers. And he basically gave me the questions and gave me the information. And I had a decision to make, right? I could have made a decision that, all right, I really want this opportunity. I really want this job. I'm going to take this information. I'm going to use it to my benefit. I did take it, but I didn't read it, and I held on to it. But I think, a few days went by, and I went back and I just said, sir, I provided it back to him. I said, no, I can't do it. Like, it didn't sit right with my values. It didn't sit right with my morals and just what I felt was true to myself. If it was going to be for me, it was going to be for me. And while I didn't provide all of the details and such, that was a question was asked about integrity during the interview process, and I actually used some of that experience in the example to speak to it. And long story short, I ended up getting the position, and that really started, continued, but really kind of jumped off my career as far as learning and development is concerned and stuff like that. But there's just going to be situations that you may be faced with that, especially when you just look at the dollars, right? That, man, like, this would be some good money. I know I have the skill set. I can do this. But is doing this, again, if it's going against the values that I have, is it really worth it in the end? And again, that if you have a strong grip on your values, that should not be a hard decision for you to make. It should be something pretty easy to just say, you know what, no, I'm good. It just doesn't fit. Does it fit with my brand? It doesn't fit with what we're doing. It doesn't fit with my values and my morals. I'm going to be good. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to pass on this particular one.
No, absolutely, man. It's crazy, when you really think about it, how many folks, like, when we talk about what's necessary to be successful as an entrepreneur, we keep bringing up this topic of discipline. We keep bringing up this topic of discernment, right? But it's crazy to think about how many entrepreneurs and businesses struggle because of a lack of discipline. It's not even just a lack of discipline in, like, kind of the fundamental things of time management, follow through, documentation, having your policies and procedures, all that stuff, right? But a lack of discipline when it comes to just, like, staying true to your core values as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the one of the best bits of advice that I got that just really resonated with me, like, I found to be really, really profound, is you were talking about business, you were talking about business decisions. And essentially this person was just like, yeah, man, I feel like with every decision you make, no matter what it is, every decision that you're making, that you're presented with, you're borrowing against something. Doesn't matter what it is, but you're borrowing against something. And so that's part of the calculation that you have to do as you're making these decisions as an entrepreneur is, what am I borrowing against, right? What am I borrowing against? What you often find is that the most successful businesses, the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that are firm in their values, and those values remain unchanged, and they act as kind of the tent poles to building the business around and establishing the culture around, right? If your values sway with the wind, for lack of a better term, right? But if they sway with the wind, and those are supposed to be the pillars that the business and your entire legacy is built around, right? What type of foundation is that establishing, right? You need something that is solid, that is cemented, from a value perspective, to be able to build a solid foundation on, right? That's the only way that you're going to get true, really reach some, ridiculous heights, right? The tallest skyscrapers are built on, right? The tallest, most flexible skyscrapers are built on the firmest of foundations, right? The most cemented of foundations. And so, it's crazy to think about it, but, like, what would be the response in the marketplace, right? If, for whatever reason, like, let's say burgers really started getting popping, right? And then Chick-fil-A makes a decision to say, hey, we're going to start making burgers, right, to keep up with the trend. Or what would be the response, right, to Chick-fil-A, for example, making the decision to say we're going to open on Sundays?
That's what I was going to say.
Like, when their value is truly, like,
they'll be clapping and cheering all over the place. Because people be so mad. Hey, let's go to Chick-fil-A. It's Sunday. They're closed. I tell my baby girl that all the time. But, yeah, I know people will start to like, why are they doing this?
Correct.
Like, are they doing it just for the money? Or are they really what we thought they were from the values and morals that they say they believe?
Correct, right? And then how does that then paint all of the other decisions that they've made that are, quote-unquote, cemented in their values, that now look like more expediency, right, or decisions that are made solely, based off of profit and not rooted in a core belief system, right? And so, yeah, you don't want to be, you don't want to be looking like Chick-fil-A opening up on Sundays, as an entrepreneur, in terms of your values being so flexible. And what I will say too, right, is that, we've talked about this a little bit, but, I'm confident, not this season, but probably in season 3, we'll probably start touching on this, but like the value as an entrepreneur of collaboration, right? And partnership, and being able to seek out partners and collaboration and collaborating with people in the same space as you and all this other stuff, right? And how that can multiply the impact of your business. But I will say that you'll find it very hard to have meaningful partnerships if potential partners get an inkling, a sense that your values, waver.
Yeah.
Right, because I don't want to do business with somebody who's not affirmed, self-assured in what they stand for. I want to know that if I'm dealing with Jimmy, right, and Jimmy is a devout believer, a man of high integrity, high morals, a direct communicator, right, somebody who is empathetic and understanding, but is also a true leader. If that is who I'm going into business with, I don't want to see any indication that he's none of those things, right? Because the minute I see that Jimmy can be swayed, he can be swayed to not be empathetic. If the money's right, he can be swayed to not being, a God-fearing man. If the money's right, he can be swayed to not being a discerning leader. If the money's right, then I don't want to do business with them, because ain't no telling what the cost. Right, the cost of his soul, for lack of a better term, the cost of his soul will be, and what will that mean for me? So,
yeah, no, absolutely, brother, absolutely. Thankfully, you won't have to worry about that.
Nah, not at all. Right. So,
but we're not going to dive into that. That gets back to being evenly yoked when you're talking about collaboration and having a partner and doing business, right? And we talked enough about the Joe Budden podcast and their situation, but again, values and how people see things and how that affects relationships and situations. So what we're discussing in this particular podcast episode is, again, strategies to make smarter and faster decisions, but 5 reasons that cause indecision, procrastination, and even delayed decision making. So we've already broken down a lack of confidence and how that could affect your decision making. What happens when there's a conflict with your personal values. And then Dee's about to get into, again, a delayed decision making, maybe because there's a lack of information, and how that can play into that as well.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about how there's momentum in the decisions that we make, and if we're not ready to make maybe the major decision, how there's still other decisions that are being made in preparation for being able to make that major decision, right? And one of those decisions could be the decision to go and get more information. Now, having a lack of information can definitely help delay decision, but I think where the biggest issue may come in terms of a lack of information then manifesting itself as procrastination or indecision really comes down to one specific operative word, right? And that's delaying a decision in the hope that more information will turn up, right? And that not being a good idea. And again, the operative word there, right, is in the hope of. So again, when we think about hope, what we're saying is, that, there's no action being taken on our part to get more information. We're waiting for the information to fall in our lap. We're waiting for it to be revealed. We're waiting for somebody to come to us and say, hey, something in my spirit told me you need more information about this, right? Like, we want that kind of that divine, intervention to come down and rear its head and a voice to speak to us, right? And really, it's not that, right? Really, we should be pursuing getting additional information, right? So delaying decision in the hope that more information will turn up, it's never a good idea. It's much better to, again, go and get information, and you can do that in the form of like learning from successful businessmen and top executives that may have been faced with a similar challenge, like we talked about, being discerning about who do you look to learn from, and when they were having to make similar decisions in their careers, how did they go about making these decisions, right? And I think the thing that's helpful too when you look at some of these extremely successful, um, entrepreneurs, business
Mm-hmm.
builders, right? One of the things that is a common thread, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before in other podcasts, right, is that they understand how harmful delayed action can be, especially when you're talking about a fast-paced, like growing market, right? And they really do live by that motto of accelerating time, moving with speed, like the sooner the better, and being able to then learn, right? To be
Mm-hmm.
able to learn, like they go into it saying, okay, I'm going to get as much information as I need or as I can get in order to make an effective decision, knowing that it may not be perfect, but I'm not going to take a loss. I'm going to get a lesson from this. And then I need to be able to move quickly to iterate and to learn from that, right? And so, again, our challenge for our entre leaders out there is just, as you find yourself, in a situation where you need to make a decision, maybe you don't have enough information, right? The key is one, to take action, to not hope, right, and to go and pursue getting additional information, and then getting just the needed information in order to make an effective decision, because there's also a lot of risk in terms of procrastination and indecision when you're pursuing having too much information, which I know, Jim, you'll be kind of talking about here a little bit in a minute as we transition. But that too can be a huge driver for indecision and ineffective decision making, right? Is either not having enough information and not taking action to go and get it, or again, having too much information or in the pursuit of too much information, and a little bit of analysis paralysis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just what you said, right? So, the other end of that spectrum, right, is what happens when it's a good thing to be resourceful and say, all right, I don't have all the information that I may feel that I need, but I'm going to be confident with what I have, push forward, and make that decision to at least move forward and start taking steps, because you could always go back and say, okay, as I'm progressing forward, I can then start gathering more information and be that much more confirmed in the decision and the process or the path that I'm following. But again, what happens if you just have too much information? Like, it can just, you mentioned it, paralysis by analysis. I feel like maybe I'm a perfectionist and I want to have it absolutely right. So I'm trying to get as much information as possible. Or you could even be fooling yourself because you're scared to move forward. So in your mind, I need information. I need to go through this process. I'm researching. I'm doing all of these different things to say, oh yeah, I'm working on my business, but yet you're not really taking true steps to get the business moving, because in your mind, I need more information. And you just get pulled, man. It's this huge just swamp and muck of minutia and details that are really not truly relevant to the outcome that you really want to achieve. So it's one thing to not allow yourself to get caught up with saying, well, I don't have enough information. Trust yourself, trust your intuition, take what you have, be resourceful, make a decision and move forward. But also, don't go down that path where you feel like you need so much information and you're really using it as an excuse, because maybe you're too afraid. Take what you have and just make that decision and move forward. But stay tuned, y'all. Our legacy leaders out there, because on the next podcast episode, we're really going to start breaking down how do you deal with information overload as we start to jump into some specific strategies to help you with decision making.
Yeah, man. It was crazy too. I've just seen firsthand, and I think especially like with creators, man, just that pursuit of more information, of I need more feedback. I need more feedback on the music. I need more feedback on what I'm creating. I need I want to see if I can incorporate a new sound. I want to see if I can incorporate a new style out of, and really what we're using is we're using the mask of perfection to hide the fear, right? The fear of rejection, right? We're using the mask of perfection to hide the fear of rejection, because what we're saying is, if I'm still always working on it, it's not a final product, right? well, one, I can always hide behind that if somebody does hear it and they don't like it, they're not a fan of whatever I produce. It's well, oh, this is not even done yet, right? Like I'm still working on this, right? So that's one. And then two, it's a great diversion for not putting myself out there to get the feedback and and to open myself up to criticism, right? Because I can always say, I can get the gratification, if you want to call it that, right? But I can get the false gratification of people acknowledging that I'm a creator and an entrepreneur and a builder and a business and all the stuff that undeservedly comes with that, right? Because there's a lot of folks, unfortunately, out there that love the idea of being a boss, but not being a boss, right? And so they want to throw out that, hey, yeah, I got my own business, just so that they can throw out that line. But yeah, so I'm able to still kind of get that gratification without the fear of rejection of being exposed. And then it's crazy because I've seen it happen too, like where that pursuit of perfection or more information also creates a situation where now whatever product you're creating is dated, right? Oh, that's not the sound anymore. That's not the wave, man. Right? And then now I have a new excuse for not. Oh man, I gotta work on something totally new. Nah, this ain't it. Like, cause man, this was the wave 2 summers ago. Like, this ain't even right? And then the cycle starts all over again of creating something new. The pursuit of more information or perfection getting in the way of you not releasing, not putting your product out there, not opening up your doors, truly opening up your doors, right? You're still saying you're working on it, you're working on the formula, you're trying to figure it out. It then gets dated, and then you start all over again, right? So I love the fact that kind of you touched on that, like, and it is sometimes a difficult conversation or realization for entrepreneurs to come to grips with. But you really have to ask yourself, do I really need more information, or am I trying to run out the clock? Because there's a lot of that, right? Am I trying to run out of the clock, or am I trying to avoid? I'm trying to avoid the next logical step in the process, right? Which is to put myself out there in the marketplace and to get feedback, because we are, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. Like, we need to lean into it, right? Because as creatives, as people who have built something, we are sensitive about what we built, because we put if you're doing it right, you put a piece of your soul in it, right? So we're not negating that, but that can also be intimidating. The thought of, well, how am I going to respond to rejection if somebody says they don't like what I produced?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And that's like they're not just rejecting my art. They're not just rejecting my business. They're not just rejecting what I'm rejecting. Yeah, they're rejecting me. And how am I going to handle that, right? And so I don't want to even think about that. So let me just keep working on it, right? Let me just keep working on it, or let me make it so great. I'm going to work on it, make it so great and so perfect that nobody will ever be able to reject it. And I'm here to tell you, care who you are.
Haters gonna hate.
Like, they gonna reject it. Like, it's just everybody's taste is different. Like, I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
There are people out there. Right, I put it in a super plain perspective, right? If we're talking about we're talking about creatives in a creative space, right? Because art in itself is subjective, and I do look at entrepreneurship and building a business as an art form, right? Because you're defining a niche. People have to be bought into the vision. They have to have an appreciation for what you're building. It has to resonate with them on an emotional level. It has to resonate with them on from a value prop perspective, like all of that stuff, right? But regardless of the accolades that Michael Jackson has received in his career, right? There are people out here who listen to Thriller and Billie Jean. Nah, that ain't it, man. Like, nah, I don't like Michael Jackson, or I don't like the Beatles, right? Or again, I don't like Prince, right? Or Stevie Wonder's voice ain't that great. You know what I mean? Like, Michael Jordan's not the best basketball player, right? Like, Tom Brady's overrated, right? Peyton Manning, Peyton Manning's overrated, right? Like, you have there's these pocket of folks that exist. Like, they're not just pockets. Like, we're talking about, if you're talking about truly being in the marketplace, right? There's 7 billion people on this earth.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's that's the problem. We get too caught up in the people who don't rock with us, who don't like us, and even the thought of that, as opposed to no, just focus on the people out there who do. Yeah, exactly. The community that appreciates and values you, what you bring to the table, whatever your product and your service is, and focus on them. The people don't like it, it's not for them.
Period.
It's not for them. Yeah, so just leave it alone.
Yeah.
And put your energy in a proper spot, which again is providing as much value as you possibly can to the community that is showing up and is looking for you and wants to hear from you.
Exactly.
And wants to buy. They want your services, they want your products, whatever it is, they want it.
Exactly.
And that's really all that matters.
Period. Right? And if you find your niche, you find your tribe, you find your community, you cater to that and you focus on that, and you concern yourself with their feedback and only their feedback. Because here's the other thing too, is that everybody's entitled to an opinion, for sure. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? But that doesn't mean that everybody's opinion is entitled to your time. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's opinion is not entitled to your time. So, like, I'm not going to ask. Actually, it's funny enough. I was just dealing with this today, right? So, Mother's Day came and went. I had ordered the missus this clutch that she's really been having her eye on from Bloomingdale's. It took forever and a day in order for us to get it, but we finally got it. All right, so like it finally came in. I ordered before we even Mother's Day hit and delays and all this other stuff, so it finally came. Right, so the clutch that she wanted, like, again, just so you guys know, I do not care about no damn purses. I don't. They're all the same to me.
That's all I say.
They're all the same to me. Like, I don't care. I really don't. But she cares, and this is important to her, right? So. So the clutch came, she's looking at it, she loves it, but then she also finds that there's another clutch, like same brand, right, but now there's a sale, so it looks a little bit different, right, different styles, you know, she can save money, so like she gets to asking me my opinion about what purse is better and that she should go with. Now, I am entitled to my opinion, but it does not mean that my opinion is entitled to her time or her energy, right? And for me, I am very aware of that. So I tell her, babe, don't ask me. I do not care about purses. I am the wrong person to have this conversation with. Like, but what do you think? It doesn't matter what I think. I'm telling you it doesn't matter what I think because I do not care about this very specific topic. If you want value-added feedback for you to make a decision, you need to go to somebody who cares about this stuff. Like, hit up Alyssa, hit up your homegirl, like, get their opinion, get their perspective. Don't ask me. Because to me, honestly, if you want my opinion right now, I'm looking at the two bags, and damn it, they look the same. So I don't even know what the difference is. They look the same to me. They're the same thing, the same bag, just, you know, one's $200 cheaper, so yeah, get that one, right?
I was gonna say which one was least expensive.
Yeah, that's what
that's the one I like.
That's one I like, right? So again, you know, it's important for you as an entrepreneur to be able to realize that too, and that's a part of the discernment, and then one of some of the micro decisions that are being made up to larger decisions, right? Which is like, man, look, what I'm going to produce is not for everybody, but I don't need to spend my time, you know, considering the opinions of everybody. Because if you're not in my niche, if you're not my tribe, if you're not my community, why would I concern myself with your thoughts in this area? Like, why would I allow that to sway my decision making and feed maybe my indecisiveness? Because now I'm concerned about, man, I gotta make it perfect for, you know, in her mind, right? Going back to Gabriella's example, man, I gotta pick the perfect purse for Devon to like. You will never make me happy. Because I don't care, right? So you can spend all the time you want to wringing your hands trying to make this decision about the purse, right? And then when it comes to me, I'm not going to give you what you want. I'm not going to say, oh, you finally found the purse I want. I'm going to be like, I don't know. You like it? If you like it, all right, cool. It's going to be very underwhelming. Right?
I like what you like.
Correct, right? If you like it, I love it, right? It's going to be very underwhelming. And so... I think that's a great lesson and great advice for our entrepreneurs out there is, like, you know, if you are using the pursuit of perfection to avoid any type of criticism, it's going to be an unfruitful effort. Period. Because no matter what you do, you're guaranteed that somebody's not going to like it. You shouldn't expend your energy there. And if you spend all your energy trying to convince the person that doesn't like it to finally like it, I'm telling you, it's going to be very underwhelming, their response. Right? And be like, yeah, I guess it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you didn't spend all your energy to hear it's not that bad.
So as we continue to move forward, like when we're talking about making decisions, there's going to be decisions that we make that it's easy to predict, right, as we're making this decision, what the outcome is going to be. Like, I know if I make this decision to do this, then most likely, it's not always guaranteed, but most likely, X is going to happen. But talk to us, Devon, about, what happens how does this hinder my decision-making process if the outcome of the decision is like completely and just totally unknown?
Yeah, man. Well, where it really rears its ugly head, right, is just that fear of the unknown and that fear of failure. And I would just say, too, like, when we talk about, like, the fear of the unknown, a lot of it, too, is rooted in, am I going to be prepared to handle whatever is out there, right? It's almost like this. We start to manifest or harbor these images in our head of the monster on the other side of the unknown, right? And this is, these are things that have existed since we were kids. It's the reason why, growing up, if you had to walk into a dark room, like Gio deals with this, right now, he's like, if he has to go in our room, he's like, yeah, but it's dark in there. Yeah, there's also a light in there, bro. You know what I mean? It's because the fear of, like, what could potentially be in the dark, like, is just so overwhelming that it dissuades him from even wanting to go to the room. It's like, bro, like, just turn on the light. Like, you're going to be all right. I promise you. You're going to, wherever's on the other side of that dark, when you turn on the light, you're going to be able to handle it. Right? You're going to be, and I promise, and if you can't, the good news is I'm here. I'm going to be here to help you handle it too, right? And so, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, it's that fear of the unknown, of that monster in the dark, right? That may lead to indecision, right? And it could start with very early on in your entrepreneurial walk, and just the decision to maybe start your own business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's crazy, right? Because I think back to, like, just each of our experiences, and, like, that very first time you decide to. Hey man, I'm gonna actually, like, put myself out there and try to build a business. Like, I'm gonna file an LLC. Like, for me, when I was thinking about that, like, the very first time I went through that, bro, like, it seemed like the most daunting, scary. Like, I'm like, oh man, like, what if I file it incorrectly? Like, what about the taxes, and, like, making sure that, like, from a tax perspective, I'm on point, and what if I build the website, try to build the website, I don't know how to build the website, it goes wrong. Like, all of these things can be intimidating, right? And that fear of the unknown, and we make it out to be this crazy monster in the dark. Yeah. And then as we still move forward in the face of fear, right? And we turn on the light like Gio does, and then you realize ain't nothing scary in here. Ain't a single thing in here scary, right? And in fact, the thought of being afraid was scarier than actually entering the room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The thought of being afraid was scarier than entering the room. The thought of starting a business was actually scarier than the process of running your business, right? Of starting and running your business, right? And so, if you're unable to muster up the courage to turn on the light. Right, to turn on the light and not step foot into that dark room, it can definitely lead to indecision or indecisiveness, and two, you'll never be able to dissipate that fear because in your mind, because you haven't turned on the light and entered the room, that crazy monster that you've manifested in your head exists. It still exists, right? Because you haven't disproven it, right? And so that can definitely, like I said, definitely cause indecision, and indecisiveness and procrastination, right? That fear.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just broke down 5 reasons that cause indecision, procrastination, like Devon just said, delayed decision making, right? We talked about lack of confidence, conflict with your personal values, lack of information, too much information, and then the outcome of the decision being completely unknown. Now, there's a couple of other things too that we're not going to get into, but I definitely encourage you to noodle on it. And if you have thoughts, man, leave comments for us. We definitely like to hear from you within the podcast or within the YouTube channel once the video is posted. Making decisions in a lose-lose situation and how that can hinder your decision-making process. What about fast-paced change? Things that seem to be moving so quickly, that can hinder your ability to make decisions. And then decision fatigue. You and I have talked about this, right? Like, we're in a position where you have to make so many decisions throughout the day. Sometimes I'm tired. I'm tired of making decisions. But sometimes it's in those moments in your life where, like, I can't let up. Like, there's decisions that still have to be made, that I have to muster up the mental energy and capacity to get through those different situations. So as we start to focus on the next episode, and again, really breaking down strategies that you can use to allow yourself to make smarter and faster decisions, we're going to start getting into, again, how you can quell some of these challenges that we just talked about in that next podcast episode. So you're not going to want to miss that. Again, breaking down strategies to make smarter and faster decisions for all of our entree leaders and legacy leaders out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said, what we talked about today was really just acknowledging the drivers of indecisiveness and procrastination. So again, if you're really looking for some answers, some tactics on how to overcome these things, we're going to get into that into the next episode. Coming out of this, definitely like noodle on the things that we talked about. Do some self-reflection too. Like, take stock of like how many times have you found yourself as an entrepreneur or a leader failing to make a decision, and it's because of these things. And how often are you using maybe some of these things as crutches or diversionary tactics to avoid doing what you need to do, which is to make the difficult decision. Like, I think that's the other thing that we talked about, a couple of times throughout our podcast episodes, when you really take a step back and you identify, like, what is the anatomy of an entree leader, an entrepreneur, entree leader, a leader, a legacy leader, right? It's our ability to make the difficult decisions that others won't or can't, right? It is our ability to navigate the unknown, right? Be willing to navigate the unknown, to cast a vision, to chart the course, to help navigate other folks through the unknown, right? And it's that self-awareness, right? It's that self-awareness. And again, you guys know how we are. Like, we're real with you. At one point or another in our careers, in our lives, we have fallen victim to one of these things. Right, right, and maybe on several occasions, but it's only through the self-awareness, it's only through the reflection, it's only through doing the work that we've been able to not just acknowledge it, but be able to overcome it. And we'll get into the specific tactics that we've been able to leverage throughout our career, our journey as entrepreneurs, to be able to overcome these things so that we can make the difficult decisions that need to be made. Because, again, like I said in the beginning, and I want to reiterate here, right? For these decisions as entrepreneurs, we know they're not going anywhere. They're not going to disappear. Like, if the decision needs to be made today, it's not like you just sleep on it and then you wake up tomorrow and the decision doesn't need to be made no more. Like, it's going to still be there, right? And the longer you delay this, decision, a decision or deciding, the greater the stakes, the more ratcheted up the urgency becomes, the less opportunity there is for pivot, right? If you need to go in another direction because you've delayed it to the point where maybe you don't have as much time to now learn, iterate, and pivot, right? And so we're really trying to stress this month and give you the tools needed so that you can make the decision, because if you do not make the decision will make you. I promise you it will make you as an entrepreneur
100%.
100% of the time. And so Really excited to get into the next episode and really start breaking down some of these tactical things, because I know some of our entrepreneurs or entre leaders out there listening, you may be further along in your self-awareness walk, and you're like, all right, I hear y'all, I'm with y'all, yep, those things exist. What do I do about it? Well, stay tuned. We're going to be telling you in the next episode exactly what you do about it in order to overcome it.
100%. So to all of our entree leaders out there, again, thank you for listening. Please show some love, comment, like, and share this episode. We would greatly appreciate that. Again, it costs you nothing, but maybe 30 seconds of your time. If you want to reach out to us, again, meet us on Facebook in the Legacy Leader community. We would love to have you in there. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Legacy Leadership. And then as well as on LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course our YouTube channel, Legacy in Leadership Podcast. All of the different social media platforms that you can follow us and continue to get snippets and different clips of all of the golden nuggets that are being dropped. And just continue to follow the story as we work and get better at our branding and just telling the story and our journey of what we're going through again, these social media platforms. We'd love for you to take that journey with us. So there you have it. Do not miss the next episode, as again, we start to really break down the strategies to help make you a smarter and faster decision maker. So for all of our entree leaders, legacy leaders, until next time, God bless y'all.
Stay encouraged.
Take care, everybody.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.